Okay, so today we're doing what's called the Zentangle. That's a phrase they put to it recently when you have just patterns. So I have drawn out a pattern. Let me bring it closer to you. That's just a simple, well, some of you won't think that's so simple, but that's a simple pattern on the page, and I'm going to color it in all the way around in all the different colors and whatever color I want. You can do the same. Now, a good example of Zentangle would be this platter I have here. If you see this platter, it's nothing but patterns, and I've stared at this for a while. There are not two patterns the same on this large platter, and that's pretty cool. But you can see how much fun you can have going with it, and some people will fill an entire page with different patterns. So let's get started. I have pre-moistened my watercolor palette. I have paper towels here, and I have a tub of water. I previously sketched this out, and now I'm going to begin to paint it. And let me start with my small circles around the edge. No, I'll start with the middle one here. So I'll do that in a blue. You're mainly going to use the very tippy tip of your paintbrush without pressing down hard. You can get into small areas this way. Right now there's too much water in my brush, so I'm just going to suck some of this up. You don't want too much water because you just want to paint in this area. So now I'm not going to dip in water too often, and I have a small well of blue here. And why not go ahead and paint another portion of the painting? So I'm going to separate some of these lines here, and I'm going to do this inside line real carefully. You can just turn your paper as you go too. That makes it a lot easier. Now, the way this will work is we can work on, I don't want to work right next to something that I just got wet, so we can work around other areas. For instance, at this point in time, I'm waiting for this center to dry, this outside ring. So I'm going to go over here and paint the little dots around this shape and patterns that I have. I hesitate to call it a flower. Perhaps it's a flower, but I want to think of it as just a pattern right now. And your patterns, you can start out with this pattern, but your patterns in the future could be anything you want. Remember the plate? Remember this plate? You just look at that for a little while. There's so many interesting and fun patterns. All right. So now I'm going to use red, and I'm going to use not too much water. I already learned my lesson that if I loaded my brush up with too much water, I'll end up with a big puddle there. Whether or not it grows, I don't know, but I don't want to do that. So, and hopefully I've mixed up, I'm going to pick up a little water though. I've mixed up some red, and I'm going to do the same. I'm just going to turn my page as I go around. This is a project, can be just fun. You don't even have to think about it. You don't have to think about shades and values so much that I talk about. Just have fun creating the patterns and filling them in with color. Very therapeutic also. I made just the right amount of red, yay. While I have the red here, I'm going to go ahead and paint my squares on the inside, not squares, what would we call them? Kind of like triangles. So I'm doing red here. Then I'm going to throw through the center here more red. I didn't paint too much on the close to the lines, but nevertheless I'm going to wait. And now your 16 palette watercolor palette, I'm going to use this lighter orange. There's 2 shades of orange on it, and I'm going to use that for my petals. So here we go. Remember, I just pressed too hard with my brush. Don't press your brush too hard. Try to paint from just the tip here. Load it up with paint. And then just like in coloring, sometimes do the outside edges and then go in and do that part. We're almost done here. Yellow in any medium we use, yellow is such a difficult color to work with because it's so light that it's hard to see it sometimes. But in the case that we're working here, in which we're painting with just the tip of our brush, we probably can pick up a little more pigment and not as much water. Always still make a puddle, but just don't pick up as much water in your brush. It's tricky. I hope my head isn't in the way. And I'm just about done here. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to make a lighter green. I'm keeping all my colors a little on the lighter side. And I'm going to go into this center area with green. You don't have to be in a hurry. Take your time. And it's about control too. Slow down and control that brush. Okay, we haven't done a purple yet. I'm gonna grab this magenta. And I'm gonna go ahead. I can't touch the edge where I just applied green. There's too much water in my brush. Oops. So there we have it. You can use any colors you would like to make yours. And if you still had time, you could go on and make a bunch of other patterns on your paper. Anything you want. I hesitate to give you any projects that you copy. Instead, I want you to come up with some of your own. And then what you start is, you start with that center area and then build your way out on anything that you might be making. One or two can be simple, and then you can have a very detailed one. Ain't that cool? Alrighty, that's all for today. Bye-bye.